Hey everyone, today I'm joined by João Landeiro. João is a business strategist who helps consultants turn their methods into standout service formats. He's known for teaching how to design high conviction, high conversion workshops, and his frameworks have helped agencies codify their expertise into scalable offers. I wanted to have João on because agencies need to differentiate in this AI era, and building signature formats is a potential moat to capitalize on. So, in this episode, we discuss why formats can't be faked and how to use that, how to codify your method without being generic, signs clients see that make them trust you faster, and more. Lead gen is the hardest part of running an agency. For most, it's unpredictable, it's slow, and it's usually expensive. Gia flips that. It's the all-in-one growth platform that turns your existing relationships and client work into a steady pipeline. Gia automates lead gen, follow-up, and content, and it's all from the work you're already doing. You can check it out and get some free bonuses at getgia.ai/dynamic agency. And now, João Landeiro. It's easier than ever to start an agency, but it's only getting harder to stand out and keep it alive. Join me as we explore the strategies agencies are using today to secure a better tomorrow. This is Agency Forward. When did you realize that formats could be a moat?
There wasn't a specific point in time, but there was a confluence of signals that I was getting. So the first one was when I was talking to people in the more in the boutique consulting world. They kept hitting on this consulting value proposition, signature methodology, that kind of thing. That spoke to me because I like to think about methods and stuff like that. But another thing that was an ingredient to this realization was, I know it's not a quote from Blair Enns himself, but Blair quotes this, which is the sales process is a preview of the service. So what happens in the sales process is kind of how things will happen throughout, right? And I remember thinking that the way you deliver the thing that you do is very hard to copy, right? On the surface, people can have all sorts of claims about, oh, we do it like these guys do, but usually what you see of somebody else's process is only like a little bit of it. So if the way you do the work, if the way you deliver the work is packaged into a format, and that format represents how you do things, that's difficult to copy unless people already have the same skills and the same perspective and the same flight hours and all of those things that are difficult to copy, right? It's not about what you say, it's about what you do. And that's kind of how I came into that.
Yeah, there are so many different, like you can have one outcome that you're targeting, but the way that you actually achieve that outcome can differ based on the format, right?
Yeah.
And so obviously there's like, some people might gravitate towards certain formats based on their skill set, for experiences, everything. How do you kind of figure out what is the best format for me to actually like deliver this outcome?
You hinted at one of the elements, which is there must be a fit with the way you function. Like some people are, for instance, my thing is workshops, right? And some people are not really good at that sort of emergent kind of meeting, right? They want to have things really on very specific rails. So for them, it wouldn't fit, right? So that's one thing. Mm-hmm. The other thing is which specific kind of IP we're talking about. So to me, it feels that IP is usually about a way of seeing things or a way of doing things. There's great variations, but that's mostly how I see it. Mm-hmm. And then there's the objective you have for that IP, right? So let's say that you have a way of helping agencies, and you have this whole model of how you could be of use. But right now, for your business, you're trying to find a way to, get into a new sector, vertical, whatever, new group of people. So for that specific business objective, maybe the format you'll use is a different format than a format that you use for existing clients that already trust you. The underlying IP, the underlying world model is the same, but they change the format based on those things.
That makes sense. Cause so I ran a workshop actually last year as like hey, let's plan out 2026. Let's get you everything you need so you can have a good 2026. And we brought in, I think there were like 5 agencies. And this is not normally how I work with agencies, but every agency in that workshop ended up becoming a client.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And I think it was because of how like getting the initial sales was a lot harder than selling them from there into my coaching program.
Yeah.
And I think it was because of just like how we were delivering meant they got to see me in action, like working with them in their brands, talking about specific things. And it was just super obvious that like the format here really did help with like the sales process. And now in retrospect, I'm wondering why I haven't done that more. But yeah, are you seeing the same thing?
Yes, it's a high bandwidth thing, right? So especially for this sort of expertise that we're talking about, which is not just specialized. You're specialized not on a skill or on a tool. You're specialized in about integrating different things, right? And this is a difficult thing to convey and to express. And this is why when people ask you at the barbecue, maybe not you because you've been doing this for longer, but this is a common trope. Like your clients kind of get what you do, but your family doesn't get what you do, right? A lot of people know this or feel this. And one of the advantages of working side by side, like in a workshop, is that people see you thinking in real time, right? They see like you're thinking on your feet. And those things, they are very difficult to fake. Like experts do that. Experts will arrive at the situation, see like a whole cloud of issues, and they'll say, what matters is this one, right? And you see that with a plumber or any expert that comes to your house to fix something. That's one signal of expertise. So yeah, I think in that sense makes a lot of sense that when people saw you doing things with them, they were like, yeah, I'm confident that Chris knows the second part of this.
So yeah, so I guess how do you go about determining now like this is the best mode for handling, because like workshops is one format,
Yeah,
right, to be able to tackle. I guess what are some of the other formats for how we could be delivering?
I tend to look at workshops in terms of a range in which sometimes the word workshop means like a longer thing, maybe a half day or multiple day thing. But then you have like work sessions. But the primitives, the ingredients are the same. So I usually talk about this in terms of shoulder to shoulder work instead of face to face work, which is you and the client. You are peers, which is great for the whole framing as peers. Like you are with them solving the issue. So I wouldn't say that the formats that I specialize in are so different, but you have ranges of involvement or of depth, so to say.
Yeah, and I guess even like I'll do just one-on-one coaching, and which would be more of like a work session, like a workshop kind of session, like because I am getting the client involved in whatever we're doing. I'm not just giving them the answers to the test.
Exactly.
And so yeah, that's interesting to like even just rethinking about how you framing a workshop in like just a smaller piece in a one-on-one environment like that. Yeah. So I guess I did want to talk to you about just best practices for workshops, but why copying some of those best practices might actually be risky.
Got it. So I'll say that as someone that tends to try to come up with things from first principles, don't try to come up with things from first principles. It's good, I think, to copy the first layer of things. But what you're copying, and we kind of touched on this previously, what you're copying is like your perception of how they do things, right? So you're copying a photocopy of the map, not the territory, right? And a good example of this is the advice about niching. Like niching is not just pick something and go really small. There's a whole lot, set of things that you need to consider, right? But if you just parrot out like, oh, niche down, niche down, niche down, but you don't think about like how you make those decisions, you're copying the best practice, which is yes, niche down, but you're not understanding how to actually do it, right? So the same thing applies to workshops. Like one example. sometimes this is a very common thing for people that are starting out with workshops, which is they want to use all the interesting activities and the exercises, all the nice, funny post-its and games. It's very common. And so what happens is that they try to use all the tools, all the activities of they know, and then the workshop becomes disjointed because it's not flowing, because in between each step of the way you're changing what you're asking of the audience, right, of the participants. So that's an example of you're copying someone that is really proficient at workshops, and you see them do like almost crowd work. And you're like, oh yeah, I need to wear like a funny shirt, and that's not it. But you're just seeing what's on the surface. So when you copy best practices, at some point you should start there, but at some point you could enter, as they say in Brazil, you enter the woods without a dog. So you
you're just gonna get lost.
You're gonna get lost.
I don't know. We'll figure out the translation for that one.
Yeah, because the woods here, they have like jaguars and stuff like that. So you want to have a dog, yeah.
Yeah, we're fortunate enough to not have those up here.
Yeah, bears and
Maine. But so yeah, there's a decision making model called the Kinnavan model. It's Gaelic, yeah. But what I like about that model is like it literally tells you cannot just copy best practices unless you're in an environment where there are minimal variables. Like as soon as you start adding variables, it's impossible to have a best practice. You can just have like a better practice.
Yeah.
Because you can't take into account everything else that's going on and say, this is definitely going to work for every single situation. And yeah, I think a lot of people get lost in that. And then, but to your credit, the niching down example, I was actually thinking about this the other day, where it's like, what is the point? Because everyone does give the advice, oh, you got to niche down. But it's like, what's the actual point to niching down? It's like to carve out a place in the mind of the buyer, right? So it really has nothing to do with how small can we get here. It's like I could find a very large niche if I'm the first person to find it and stuff. Like you get the bonuses that now we get more efficient at everything because we're seeing the same patterns and doing this. But like really, we're just trying to carve out that place in the mind of the buyer. And so that would be like the best practices would actually lead to that, not just how do we keep removing things from what we're trying to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Niching down is about the reducing the area of consideration, not the market, right?
Exactly. And I think that's where, a lot of people get mixed up in that. So it's a perfect example for why best practices probably shouldn't be followed.
Yeah, that framework is really good. And I think for me, it was a huge unlock. Kinnavan, that thing.
Kinnavan. Yeah. It's Irish or Gaelic, so it's really hard to pronounce.
The guy did it on purpose. But I mean, it really is like a meta method. So once you know that, you start thinking, oh, where am I? What kind of... I love to nerd out on that good stuff.
I've got his book like somewhere on this shelf. Oh, I see it right now. Yeah, I'll pull that up later. But that model was just very eye-opening for seeing how you can approach problems and how, depending on the type of problem, how you should actually approach it differently.
Exactly.
So strongly recommend everyone check that out. But I guess, okay, so moving from best practices here, it's like you're going to kind of find your own practices as you're going through this. How do you start choosing what do I need to codify like within my method, my system, in order to make sure that you are kind of getting the repetitions in and doing the same things and not just, starting with a blank slate every client?
Yeah. So a couple of things. The first one is that you need to treat your explanation of what you do, like your model, it's a product. So you iterate on it. It's never, you think about it in versions, and like it's never done. But at the same time, you need to release it, right? Like a product. You need to work on it and show it to the world, and work on it and show it to the world, which is difficult. It is difficult, I think, especially because a lot of this how do I work sort of questions, they are almost existential in a way, right? So it can be difficult for people to really hone in on how they work. And one of the things that has helped me the most on that was just writing and publishing things, because then you have a forcing function to say, you know what, this is what I know about it right now. So that's the first thing. But I would say to focus on what people find most fascinating about what you do. Like when you're working with someone and you see like their eyes go wide, and that tells you that you're doing something that they were not expecting, but they're probably valuing. And if I were to begin codifying a method, I would start there, because again, one of the advantages of codifying a method is because it gives you a differentiation asset, right? It's something that you can talk and you can show people, that tells others that you do things in a different way, right? So it makes sense that you start doing that with the parts of your work that already get people excited, right?
Hmm.
So that's where I would start. But generally speaking, I look at it like you need to have three models. It's a basic checklist of three models. You need to have a model, in my view, of how the world functions, or at least your world in your subject matter uh, expertise thing. A model of how people are operating usually. And this is usually where you find like common, the best practices, but also like common mistakes and blind spots. And it helps you diagnose when you're working with a client. You need to have a model of how they approach these things, right? And then finally, you need a model for how to bridge this sort of stuff, right? And these models, they're a little bit like a fractal. You could go crazy and just zoom in, zoom in, zoom in, zoom in. I don't think that's useful. I think, and it's a kind of a fool's errand. Just try to do that. It is intoxicating if you like that kind of stuff, because it's exciting to feel that you're discovering new layers of abstraction. But you can really spend a lot of time on it and have not much to show for it. So just to recap this bit, first thing, focus on what people are already reacting to in the way you deliver your work, and then have a model for how your domain works, how people operate in it, and how to take them to the next step.
Do you have an example of those three that we could go into?
Yeah. Okay. So imagine that you are. I'll try to use an example that everyone can relate to. Imagine that you are an accountant, right? And you help people not go to jail, and you know how the IRS functions, right? You know what they expect. You know all the mechanics of it, right? You also know, because you're experienced, that most people, they get some things right, but they usually mess up in a specific aspect, right? Oh, people always forget to file the whatever
Mhm.
form, right? And you know that the way to get people to file that form is to warn them ahead of time, to tell them what kind of information they'll need to put in, and maybe that a question 37B, you might feel that it's about your boat. It's not really about your boat. It's about your daily driver car. Is it, you know? And so you have these three models. And if you're like an accountant and you have no idea of this stuff because you just started, you have never codified what you do. But you notice that when you're serving your clients and you make this offhand remark, oh yeah, about the boat and the thing, you need to file the specific form if your boat is larger than whatever, so many feet. And your clients are like, oh, this tells me that this guy really knows this stuff, right? So that's your hint for, there's something in here about my method or my way of doing things that gets people's attention. Is this a good example? I
Yeah.
can try to.
No, I think that makes sense. Um, so I guess one of my questions, and going further from this, when you're creating like your model, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like it's something, and it's gonna change your words on this one, but like the model is the product.
Yeah.
But I'm quoting you on that now, if you're okay with it. So, but when you create this model, a lot of times people will borrow from other places, right?
Yeah.
They'll just have ideas and put it in. And like, I'm comfortable saying, I borrowed this idea from this person and I'm using it because it is the best thing that I found for this situation. Um, when you're doing things, how do you kind of create your, like, if the model is the product, how do you sell the product when including other people's ideas within what you're doing?
Mm-hmm. That's a very good question. Okay. So I think it depends a little bit on your audience. For instance, for some audiences, if you refer the origin ingredients, they will respect you more and trust you more. Like, oh, this guy's not claiming something
Mm.
that they didn't invent, right? And some other audiences, they don't care about that. And I think there's less that you can do about that. And I used to wonder, like, yeah, but if the thing that I do needs all these parts from all these other people, this is just my opinion. And I felt like it's not a great way of framing it. And then I was talking to someone that helps people publish books, and they were like, there's a difference between a perspective and an opinion, right? So it's not your opinion, it's your perspective, as in, it's not random. There were many tools, frameworks, ideas, concepts from other authors that you were exposed to, but you decided not to use, right? So when you make your cocktail of foundational theories that support your own theory, in that choice, there's an element of how you think and how you think about your work, right? So you can talk about it, but I do think that for some audiences, like when you reference Kinefin or Kunefin, I never know how to pronounce it. We need a counter. Ding.
Right.
They'll say yes because they'll recognize, yeah, Chris knows this stuff, and for others, like, yeah, sure, whatever. How do I do this thing? And so I think at the end, it really, you don't control how people interact with your concepts, right? You can only, it's like a gardening thing. You create conditions, but maybe people will interact with it in a different way.
Yeah. So I'm wondering if it's better to layer your perspective on top of whatever model and find like what pieces of the model don't I necessarily agree with so that I can kind of create my own version of this. Or is that too close to like just stealing IP?
Honestly, I think that's a good idea. I think that's a good idea because, okay, let's use an example. Do you know Garfield, the comic strip?
Yeah.
I don't know if you love Garfield. If you love Garfield, this will feel awkward. But Garfield is not a great comic strip, right? Calvin and Hobbes, there's other comic strips that are really good. But Garfield is the most financially successful comic strip ever, right? Because it was made to be that way. Garfield doesn't have holiday strips. A cat, the creator researched to see that cats are pretty much vanilla in every culture. Dogs are not like that. In some cultures, dogs are not as well seen. So Garfield was created in a lab to be maximum vanilla and acceptance, right? But people that care about comic strips, they don't really tend to find, because there's nothing so interesting about it. He's a cat that likes lasagna, so yeah, that's it, right? So we might need to edit something here because I got lost in my own argument. What was your question?
I'm
sorry.
Around stealing IP.
Oh, stealing IP. Yeah. Okay. But so Garfield is super vanilla, and that's why a lot of people like Garfield, and Garfield made a lot of money, right? So there's this idea that I think is really useful, which is most advanced yet acceptable. The Maya principle is an old thing. Like you show people something that they know and understand, and then you stretch their understanding a little bit, right? So you see these when someone is creating like a new startup, and they'll say, "Oh, is the Uber for whatever?" Because they give you something that an anchor, and then the next thing, right?
Right.
When you piggyback on existing IP, you are kind of doing that. You are already taking advantage of something that people probably recognize. And I think there's clean ways and dirty ways of doing that, but I think that's better than just trying to become super esoteric and losing the crowd.
Yeah. There's definitely, I think intention is required behind whatever you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Because I'll continuously cite all of these people that I reference within my own work, within my workbook, everything, and like I'll literally be coaching clients and say, "Hey, I just learned this from this guy. Here's what we need to do." But I'm okay knowing that like I've got learnings and earnings that I get to share, and so here you go. But yeah, so that was top of mind, anyways. Let's get into we talked signals a couple times and brought up signals of expertise. I guess, what are some of those ways you can signal expertise that will actually help with conversions and stuff?
This thing you just did when you've mentioned that you are okay with expressing that you're just learning some things and learning in real time. That is a mark of expertise, right? Real experts are truth seeking, and if you are truth seeking, you don't really mind sharing that. So one mark of expertise, I think, is adaptation. You can this is like the same thing when people are entering a new field and they read the books and they see the frameworks and they get this like this super ossified ideas of how things are supposed to be done. And then you get like these super clever junior people that they know all the tools, but they cannot adapt to the reality that yes, people don't answer in the time that you think that they will answer, right? So a mark of expertise is adaptation. And within the point of adaptation is the identifying what matters in a large and complex scenario quickly. There's a science to this. They call it naturalistic decision making. And when you go and interview people like firemen, and when you go and interview firemen that are very experienced, and they're like, "How did you know that you could enter that blazing inferno and the floor would not give and you could get in and out in enough time?" Sometimes they don't know exactly how to express it, but they were paying attention to all sorts of cues. It was not random. So experts have this thing that they filter out a lot of things and they see what matters and make a decision based on that thing. So they make decisions faster, and sometimes so fast that they don't realize they've made a decision, right? So that's another mark, selecting what matters. And a third one is second order effects, right? And this can be frustrating. Like if you're an expert and you know that the way people are doing that thing will fail because there's something else that they're not considering, it can be frustrating that you need to hold yourself back at times, depends. Because for them to trust you, they'll need to hit that wall, right? But that's something that experts can do. They can describe what will happen, right? I can give an example. In some of my workshops, one thing I like to do is at the end include a bingo card of what will happen as people try to implement the decisions of the workshop, right? And it's funny because it's a game, but I'm really trying to convey like I'm seeing into the future, but I'm seeing it in a random way because it's not a sequence, it's a bingo card, right? I'm not tied to a sequence. And that really conveys the idea that, oh yeah, this guy has seen this stuff many times before. And I think every expert in every field can do things like this, but you can convey it. Just tell people what will happen if they take specific courses of action or what's likely to happen.
I like that idea. That's it also gives like more your bingo card idea gives some credibility to like your follow up
Yeah,
where like when you show up and say like, so how many, like who got bingo? Right. And it's like, all right, so let's go back. Let's actually like restart this piece and start talking about these things. But you can literally say, I told you so without actually saying, I told you so.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think as far as an expert signal, the other piece, the naturalistic decision making, there was an acronym. I was listening to a podcast. I'm not going to nail all of this. I want to say it was FIRE was the acronym. But it was any decision that is fast, something that starts with I that means not important. What was it? Repetitive and then evolutionarily based. Then we can make those quick decisions. And it was just interesting seeing like how that shifts depending on like a lot of people go with their gut on things when it's like actually you should not necessarily go with your gut. Let's actually run this through a model, see this out. But there are times when super fast decisions are necessary, and those are some of the things where it's like you could just go with this trigger. Yeah, we could probably do a whole podcast on just like how people make decisions. I feel like that would be
it's fascinating.
But we are talking to agencies, and while decision making is important to them, I want to hit you with one more question around the topic. And it's just how can agencies kind of stay premium in this AI era because they're looking at the formats that they're using and content as they're considering different ways to achieve their targets. How do they stay ahead of AI?
I think there's two things that come to mind, and I mean, obviously, it's just my it's not my opinion, it's my perspective. But there's two things I've noticed. First, people telling me stuff like, "I want our company to be an object of desire," like not really just a rational decision, but something else, like a luxury good that people just want to have. I've had people Tell me about this pretty much in these words. And the other one is the idea that a lot of the selling point of AI is removing friction, right? You don't need to wait. You just ask it. It tells you stuff. It tells you stuff in the way you want it to tell you stuff. So AI takes away a lot of friction. But friction builds conviction, right? Well, if you get quick answers for everything, and if you know that AI gets things wrong all the time, it does happen that you don't really trust that thing, or you trust it enough just while things are going well. When you need to make a difficult decision, like I'm going to fire this person because ChatGPT told me so, but this person has been important for the company and so on and so forth, then it gets hard. And do you really trust that? Some people do, but others don't. And I think conviction comes from the friction, and conviction is a deliverable. So if you're doing strategic stuff and really integrating different aspects of someone's business, heavy decisions are riding on that. The way you arrive at those decisions influences how certain you are that they are good decisions, right? So it really matters that you arrive at those decisions in the way that people will be able to follow through on them. Otherwise, there's no point. It was an interesting thought exercise, but if they're not acting on it, there's no point. And I think AI cannot provide that conviction because it's too smooth, and there's no incentive for AI models not to be smooth, right? They'll keep on increasing the smoothness, right? So I think that's a place where agencies can grab something that is not going away anytime soon, in my view.
Yeah, I like that take. All right, we got 2 questions as we wind down here. The first one being, what book do you recommend every agency owner should read?
Actually, I have it here. It's a Sprint. A lot of people have read it. It's not a new book. What I like about the book is there's a method that it describes. It's really about a multi-day workshop. But it's also interesting if you read the book from the perspective of, here are some guys that had a method, and now they made this method famous, right? Because Sprint got famous. And you try to reverse engineer how people talk about their methods and their own formats in a way that those things become famous, right? And if you go through the book and see the examples, they teach people how to do it. The kind of problem that the method solves is a problem that has a large TAM. The way they do the work brings in people from different companies. So if you're looking at the meta of getting your method to be famous, is a really interesting book as well. So I recommend it.
I don't know that I've read it yet. I'm going to have to grab a copy.
Jake Knapp and Sprint.
All right. Last question is, where can people find you?
They can find me on Substack. Is joaolandeiro.substack. Just read the show notes. You're not going to get it just from me saying it. And my company is Mesozoic, like the dinosaurs.co. And then you'll find links for everything else. I usually post on LinkedIn, usually complaining about the algorithm, but sometimes workshop stuff and productizing stuff.
And I have to give your Substack a shout out now, because this was for some reason. So I've known João for, I don't know, over a year now, probably. But did not know you had a Substack until I found it just within the past couple of days, and was after we've already scheduled for this episode, everything. And it was just diving in there and seeing the model, seeing everything. It's very, very much worth anyone listening to this to go check out a Substack.
Thank you.
So, but all right, man. Well, that's a wrap. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
That's the show, everyone. You can leave a rating and review, or you can do something that benefits you. Click the link in the show notes to subscribe to Agency Forward on Substack. You'll get weekly content, resources, and links from around the internet to help you drive your agency forward.